Rabbi Podcast. Yeah.
Hello to all of our glorious listeners out there. I am Rabbi Pinchas Landis of Partners Cleveland, and I am here with none other than Rabbi Gamliel Nassan Halevi Spiro of Yeshivas Avos Torah of Cleveland. Rabbi Spiro, how are you doing today?
Welcome to all our guests out there listening to us, and we welcome you back for another episode of the Rabbi's Podcast. Over 100 we've done so far.
That was beautiful, Rabbi Spiro. You're really getting the hang of this introduction thing. Pretty soon we're gonna have to let you kick off the episodes because I think you're coming to your own here. You're coming to your element with this stuff. One day, I mean, now we got you to use the proper background there, the Rabbi's Podcast background that everyone can see. We got you using a microphone, or we're gonna get you to put on a tie one of these days.
Yeah, we're never. You're lucky I wear a tie yeshiva, but the big news.
I was gonna say. Yeah, you know.
Mike and Ikes. No, this is something new. Cherry flavor. I've been bothered for probably the last 30 years, maybe actually the last 40 years. Everyone when you buy the Mike and Ikes, they only like the red ones. And the yellow are okay, orange is decent, and everyone likes the red the best. Why isn't there only boxes of red? They made a few years ago, they made a red box that was raspberry and what I want just the reds, just the cherries. The first time ever I found it, life will never be the same again. I'm very excited.
And as a Pennsylvania, and your Mike and Ikes are very close to home for you because they are from Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, or something like that.
Is that true? I have no idea.
Yeah, look on the box, something like that. They're from your neck of the woods.
Yes.
And by the way, Rabbi Spiro, I think we have to talk. We have a big rivalry, a big Rabbi's Podcast rivalry going on right now in the Eastern Conference semifinals with the Atlanta Hawks playing the Philadelphia 76ers. I mean, it's getting real, Rabbi Spiro. I don't know if you're following that, but 2-2. Trae Young.
I know it's 2-2. It's very, very stress-inducing for me. I'm very worried about the Sixers, but no.
All I have to say is, we have talked before about Dominique Wilkins, about how he was the one-man relay, one-man highlight reel, and how he never really cared about. Was that the human highlight reel, right? And how he never really cared about the team. And you could have said that about Trae Young up until this year, the Hawks' new star. But I gotta say, the guy had 18 assists last night. I mean, he is talking about being a no-scorer Chavero. What's that?
Trae Young is an Erlich Hayid, real man. I can only say the best things about him.
Okay, enough for our sports segment. We see how interested Rabbi Spiro is in commenting on that. So let's move on to Torah, because that's what we're here to talk about. And today is an auspicious day on the Jewish calendar. But Rabbi Spiro told me it was too inside baseball to talk about it, so we're just gonna mention it, that we're recording this on the day of the exile of King Yoachim, and that's all I can say, because if I say more, Rabbi Spiro will do a drive-by fruiting on me. And but what we do have to say before we really delve into whatever we're going to talk about today is we have to wish a big, hearty mazel tov to Rabbi Spiro on Ahuva Spiro's engagement. That's one of the reasons we were a little delayed here. Rabbi Spiro was busy. First of all, had to go visit his mother, Shisha Refuah Shlema, and Ahuva got engaged, and that's very exciting for us because Ahuva. Yeah, Ahuva and my daughter are very close friends, and anytime it's a Spiro Simcha, we're very, very happy. And it's always a frightening reminder of how old I'm getting, because Ahuva is 1 year older than my daughter. So, and it's yet to happen that one of my daughter's friends who is her age or younger has gotten engaged, but I'm sure it is happening. It's going to happen any day now. And then you see the gray hairs, then they're just going to go completely gray, and that's that,
Yeah, Ari Gunsberger. Ari Ginsberger from Lakewood. We love him. And, Baruch Hashem. Very grateful to Hashem.
Yeah, he's Jewish, this guy?
He is a Jew.
Good. He's from Eretz Yisrael, right?
On the fence, what we were looking for. Jew, non-Jew, but in the end, he came here.
Ad Maschai Yoshim Al Shnei Seifim. Rabbi Spiro, until when are you going to straddle the fence? As the great Elijah the prophet says. So, his family's originally from Israel, correct? Am I correct about that?
Bnei Brak. And they moved to America years ago, and they live in Lakewood now.
Okay, that sounds like an episode unto itself. I don't know if you can talk about it after the chuppah, but like, why a family from Bnei Brak would move to Lakewood? That just sounds like... That sounds interesting. Sounds like there's a story there. I don't know if there is or not, but it sounds like
he works with a lot of Yardim at Yeshiva for Israeli expats and in Muncie, and
got it.
Does a lot of work for Ura in their Israeli section.
Oh, cool.
So it's very Israeli cool.
Yeah, so but Rabbi Spiro and I actually made an agreement that we would not let the chassan know about the podcast till after the chuppah. We just, we figured don't risk anything, save it after the chuppah, and then we'll either turn him into an ardent listener or he will run in the opposite direction, and it'll be too late at that point. So that's that. Okay, so exciting times. I know it's exciting in the Spiro house. He had the whole family home for the engagement. It's exciting in the Landis house because as of tomorrow night, at about midnight, we will have all the Landis children under one roof for the first time in a year. That'll be exciting. And so, exciting stuff going on, Rabbi Spiro.
Can I do my pet peeve of the week?
Yeah, we really got to keep track of our different segments. Everyone always liked the kvetch of the week, and we haven't done it in a while. So, Rabbi Spiro, what's your kvetch of the week?
I have a complaint of the week this week. I was, as everyone knows, there's a new government in Israel, and we're staying away from politics. We don't, it's fine. So, all the hand wringers come out.
I'm not shaking my head.
And all the hand wringers come out and say, this is the worst it's ever been. We're not going to survive this. And it drives me crazy because it's such a lack. First of all, it's a lack of bitachon. It's the Rabbi Shalom who runs the world. We've been in a lot worse cases than that. Like someone had a great line about the election a few years ago. I think it was 2012, whatever year it was. Said, this is a huge election. This 2012 election, it's the most important election since 2008. Right? Every 4 years, the world's falling in. Every time the sky's caving, where's our bitachon? We've been in a lot worse situations than this right now, and we've trusted in Hashem, and whatever's meant to happen happens. We have to turn to Hashem. We have to daven to Hashem. Our goal is not to be in touch with our representatives in the government here. Our goal is not to lobby our congressman. Our goal is not to write letters to Time Magazine or Newsweek or U.S. News and World Report. I know is your favorite, Rabbi Landis.
The forward. Binyamin Cohen is a writer at the forward.
No anti-Semitic newspapers mentioned here, please. But
you know what? I said that to him once. I'm sorry. Finish your
what did he respond to that? He called it.
He wanted to claim that, and I brought him a few examples of the anti-Semitism. He said those are all op-eds. I said, okay, whatever. I don't know if that's true. There might be other articles that are actually written by them that are not op-eds that are anti-Semitic, but go ahead. I like your point, Rabbi Spiro.
Daven to Hashem and to improve ourselves. But when we start believing the sky is falling, the sky is not falling. There's a Rabbi Shalom. And even when the from people they're speaking, it's never been like this. It's never. We've been around for 3,300 years. I think we've been in a lot worse situations than we're in right now.
And part of why this is so ridiculous. First of all, I like what you're saying, and this has become one of my lines because for the first time ever in my life, and actually just before we got on to record this, someone was chewing me out for it actually because he said, "You're Rabbi, 501c3, you can't take a political stance." But we have our congressional race here in Ohio 11, and we have a big anti-Semite running, and the Jewish community is rallying behind the most likely person to oust the anti-Semite, and oh look, he just sent me another message. That was the beep that just came in. The guy who's giving me a hard time about it. We'll ignore him. We won't bring him on the show. But it's every conversation I have, I start with the words, "I'm worried." Actually, I'm not worried because I believe in Hashem. But as far as putting in our shtadlus, this is what we have to do. And that's what I've been saying. That it's, bottom line is if this lady that we don't want to win wins, okay, this too shall pass. And it'll be what it'll be. And we'll know that it'll at least happen knowing that we all did our shtadlus, we did our part to try and make it not happen. If it happens, it's, what else can you do? What else can you do? But so that's I love what you're saying. I've been using this line daily, more than, multiple times a day as I talk about the local congressional race. But even talk about Israel for a minute, it's such a stupid statement to say this is the worst it's ever been. I mean, it's just anyone who says that doesn't know the history of the modern state of Israel. I mean, talking about 2010 in Israel, 2011, the last time Lapid was in power, that government was far worse than this. I mean, here you at least do have elements that, again, it's a strange bedfellows. They had one goal, and there's another lesson we could take without getting into politics, and this is a very important lesson in life, that any time you have an organization form around the definition of who we are not, you know that they're not going to be successful, right? And that's the one thing that you can say about this government is this government is defined by one thing: we are not Netanyahu, right? And not even touching on the strange the strange bedfellows, if you were, but just as far as forming an organization, you have to have an identity, you have to stand for something, you have to believe in something. And if you're forming an organization, just say that we are not them, like a shul, like when you breakaways, the shuls, who are we? Oh, we're not them. We're not that rabbi. That rabbi's not a rabbi. You'll never succeed. Yeah, a yeshiva. We're not that yeshiva, right? Never succeed. You will never succeed.
Right, 100%. So there's a certain Goddull in America, and he's a great person. I'm not going to say his name. Some might know, some might not. A great person. And when he heard about when Lakewood was just starting out in the 50s and 60s and even 70s, he told many of his Talmidim, Lakewood will never thrive in America. It's not Europe. Lakewood will never thrive. And his prognosticating, what's the right word? His prognostication? It was so wrong. And Lakewood, Baruch Hashem, we've seen Hashem, the gifts he's given us, so many beautiful shuls, kolim, the amount of limud Torah that Hashem has helped us, has really not only helped us with the learners, but helped us with the supporters. It's been such a bracha. And this Rosh Yeshiva said a similar line about Satmar. He said Satmar will stay small. And he also was just wrong about that. And I think, again, you can't, this was a Goddull b'Torah, a big Talmid Chacham, but people who doubt the power of K'lal Yisroel always end up making mistakes.
100%. And we'll add to that list. My father is a retired financial planner, and he always likes to point out his the prognosis he made the first time he had a cup of Starbucks. It was right when it was becoming like a big deal. These Starbucks were showing up all over the country, and he and my mother were staying in a hotel somewhere, and there's a Starbucks in the lobby. And my father goes down and says, I'm going to check out what this newfangled Starbucks thing is all about. And he goes downstairs, and he comes back up, and he says, $2 for a cup of coffee or whatever plain Starbucks coffee costs in those days. He said, it'll never make it. And he likes to constantly point out how wrong he was. So anyhow, which, by the way, that's another great lesson we can take out of these things. Talking about the said Goddull, as you've mentioned, I don't know if that Goddull, because I don't know who it is, if he lived long enough to see Lakewood or to see Satmar. But one of the signs I think of being a Goddull is to really be modal emes, and when you see that you were wrong on whatever the subject is, to be able to stand up and say, you know what, I was wrong. I've had this. I'm actually working on a lecture. Everyone can get geared up for. We're going to have it soon in Partners in Torah. I'm trying to think of a good name, but it's going to be something along the lines of doing a 180. And it's going to be on the subject of, my mother-in-law, Aleh Shalom, was a very healthy person, very health conscious, ate very healthy, and I literally, let's see, we were married for, she's our 7th year, I'd say, we were married for 13 years before she passed away. So I literally spent 13 years making fun of her, and anytime I could give her a hard time, I gave her a hard time. And she would always she thought soda was the biggest poison in the world, and I would say things to her like Ema, look at your kids who are all short, and look at me who's 6'4", and I grew up drinking soda and they didn't. How bad could it be? Any chance I got, I would rail on her. But I've really done a 180 on that, especially as I've gotten older. My body has gone over the hill and started to eat a little bit healthier and see the positive results of healthy eating. And it's a process. It's a process to really look at something that for so long you were like, anytime you can knock it, you would knock it, and then to literally do a 180 to realize the person was right all along and you were the stupid one. And to be able to stand up and say, you know what, I was wrong. I had this all wrong. And to admit it and not just say, well, but no, stand up and say, no, I was wrong. It's like, I think I once heard from Rabbi Pesach Krohn that the three most important words in a relationship are not I love you, but I was wrong.
Oh.
Right.
Not you are wrong? I've been getting it really wrong all these years because I always tell my wife, you are wrong.
That explains a lot, Rabbi Spiro. That explains a lot.
I heard that Rabbi Pesach Krohn share. I heard him say the three most important words, I heard a little static, and he said, are wrong. And I figured, I get it. It's you are wrong. Right? And those are not the words. I'm sorry. Well, I got to apologize.
Rabbi Spiro, then if this is all you learned today, you can thank your mother for having you, because like this is the lesson you needed for today. And I think you need to go to speak to Mrs. Spiro after this. Maybe we should bring her on the camera and talk.
For sure. I mean, I think what you're saying is that we're getting that time of year. The year goes in phases, right? Besides the seasons, obviously, but also the Yom Tovim. And we're now coming to a part of the year which is based on destruction and construction. In other words, Shabbos B'Tammuz, Tisha B'Av, Elul, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, right? Which is those themes of breaking down and rebuilding. And one of the main things you want to do, it's always frustrating for anyone who has ever written anything and anyone who's ever built anything. You know what it's like when you're in the middle and you realize this is wrong. Or you're writing an article, you're 3 pages in, you're writing a shtickle Torah, and you're like, this piece is wrong. This is just not. And you think, no, I can fix it. I can try to, it's not good. You have, and there's nothing wrong with that. And nothing wrong with starting again. If I cared, a real person is able to start again. And that's the avodah, admitting when we're wrong. Yeah, no one's ever right. Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky, I'll say a quick anecdote. Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky believed that money was very scarce in the 40s and 50s. So where to allocate the money? So Baron Kotler held we have to allocate money to Chinuch Atzmai, right, the independent from school system in Israel. And Rabbi Yaakov said there's too many needs here in America, and the yeshivas in Eretz Yisrael, we don't have enough money to allocate that also. And Rabbi Yaakov said years later, I was wrong and Baron was right. Right, and he said it was Machlekes Hashem Shemayim, and in the end we went like Baron, and Baron was 100% right. So nothing wrong with being wrong. People are wrong all the time. Great people are wrong all the time, right? As long as once a person can admit it, right? The same word for thanking is the word for admitting, right? And the same word for praising. All the same word, Haida, is admitting, thanking, praising. All these different meanings. Interesting. I think I mentioned this from Rav Shalom Kamenetsky. He told me that Midas HaHaid, which is the shortish of the word Haida, means empathy. And empathy means a person's able is more than sympathy. Sympathy means a person says, "Yeah, I feel bad for you." Empathy means you show that you share in the person's pain. That's what a thank you is. You're sharing with the person. That's what admitting you're wrong is. You're admitting all these ideas of praising. Everything to do with the word Haida is reaching from outside yourself and giving to someone else, but really sharing with someone else. I think is the best word. So people are always wrong, but the people who doubt K'lal Yisroel, it's the famous debate, which we know, was the guy Arnold Toynbee, right? That his name, the British historian debated with the chief rabbi of Eretz Yisrael was Rabbi Yitzchak.
The chief rabbi who was Yitzchak Herzog.
Right. Yitzchak Herzog, whose grandson is the president of the state of Israel.
Yeah, whatever. We don't have to talk about that.
Herzog's son was Yaakov Herzog, who was also a huge Talmud Chacham. He debated Arnold Toynbee. Because Arnold Toynbee was a British...
I had to say for you. Yeah. What's that?
He said the dry bones. Is the Jews are dry bones, which will never... So...
what's this here called? Am Levada Nishkav or something like that?
Am Levada Nishkav, will dwell alone.
Yeah, the nation does well. Yeah, I remember Rav Bullman's Zatzal used to be a big fan of that book, so it was very hard to
I got it because Rav Bullman talked about it.
So did I! Wow! I have the English translation of it. I have to find it. It's such a great book. It's somewhere over here. But somewhere behind the Rabbi's podcast wall.
And he actually talks about in his debate, he says that the story in Sefer Yecheskel is the dry bones that came to life again. So Yaakov Herzog was saying that these bones will come to life, and whoever doubts the Jews in the end will go the way of the buffalo. The buffalo still exists. Buffalo still exists. I shouldn't have said the word buffalo. Actually,
Well, it really just begs the question: what is the difference between buffalo and bison? Is there a difference?
I'm
I
not
don't know.
sure. I can tell you,
You live in
year,
Buffalo, so you should know.
when I was at Yellowstone, Mike was pointing out, and he said, "Oh, look at these buffalo." Some kid nearby yelled out, "They're bison." So apparently, there is some kind of difference.
Well, as a national park aficionado, Rabbi Spiros, the Landises are going to our favorite national park because it's only one of two that we've actually been to.
Cuyahoga National Park.
No, because I was going to say that it really it's a shanda that's called a national
worst
park.
national park in the country.
How in the world? Someone want to explain to me because they needed one like in the Midwest, so they picked the best thing they could find. Is that true? You ever heard that?
It's terrible.
It's terrible. There's nothing. It's like it's again. If you've seen a real national park, like you've seen many, it's not a national park. It's whatever. We just don't. It's not a national park like the Rocky series ended after Rocky 3, right? All the 10 Rocky movies that came afterwards didn't exist. So the Cuyahoga National Park doesn't exist. It just doesn't.
What about the one where he went to Russia?
That was number 3, wasn't it?
No, 4.
Okay, so we'll give it a 4. After number 4, they don't exist anymore. Right?
I know that. It's embarrassing. I know that. What can I say? I know that.
Like we know at Rabbi Spiros, we know on this podcast how we feel about Rocky. We know that he holds a special place in our heart.
Rocky's a hero.
Yeah, you said one of the best Kaddishes ever said by a guy on the silver screen.
Mickey.
But
the Chiddush is everyone thought Mickey was Irish. Like the first 3 movies, you ask anybody, was Mickey a Yid? Mickey a Yid? No, he's Irish. And then Mickey's Nifter, and what comes out? The MS comes out. And
exactly.
Rocky he says it with feeling. Remember how Rocky says
it?
Yeah.
I don't know what bothers me more about that part, that Rocky was saying Kaddish or that Mickey was buried in a mausoleum. They're both tremendously bothersome to me. But I actually begs to. I mean, I'm going way off topic here, but it's interesting because we talk about being buried in a mausoleum is not a good thing. But if you kind of think about how would they bury in Eretz Yisrael today, well, they do whatever they can to make it burying in the earth. A lot of times, those, especially at Har Menuchos,
even they get it to the Gemara too.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty much a mausoleum.
We're buried in tombs, also.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's. Yeah, because in Eretz Yisrael, especially places like Har Menuchos, and now they have the Beis Chaim or Eretz Chaim, whatever it's called in Beit Shemesh, but there's nowhere to be buried, so they have to do that.
That's the beauty. Beit Shemesh, the community was built as a cheaper alternative to living in Yerushalayim or Bnei Brak, and the cemetery also was built.
Yeah, cheaper alternative to dying
than Yerushalayim or Bnei Brak, right? Same idea.
Exactly. My mother-in-law is buried there, so anyhow, she's buried in.
It's very hard to get spots in other places.
Oh, you can't get them. You just can't get them. I mean, we all know Har Zaysim is impossible unless you had it for 50 years already.
My grandpa was buried in Har Zaysim. He bought it years and years ago. He was buried there for years.
Yeah, my wife's great grandfather is buried there, and it was he was from the old Yishuv. I mean, that's how he got there. That's when he got there. That's all there was. It's but anyhow, what were we talking about?
Don't lose confidence in K'lal Yisroel. We were saying that.
Yeah, exactly. You can never lose confidence in K'lal Yisroel. It's interesting because as we all know, Rabbi Landis and Rabbi Spiros are very active on social media, teaching Torah on social media. Myself on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, TikTok now, and we know that Rabbi Spiros are very big on MySpace and AOL Instant Messenger. Those are the 2 places where Rabbi Spiros is a real influencer. But unfortunately, what's happening now is just like the rise of anti-Semitism. Well, it's nowhere as prevalent as it is on social media. So I'm getting just a ton of like anti-Semitic people going after me on social media, and I don't waste my time usually unless I just like kind of like you with your cold calls. If you need a little entertainment, you'll answer the cold call and go at it. That's how I deal with these anti-Semites, and I just have a simple response to all of them. I just say, I'm sorry, you're on the wrong side of history, my friend. I said, you just check your facts. You're on the wrong side of history here, and you're going to be on the wrong side of history.
Most people don't have the ability to look at things the big picture. They're only looking at things like in the immediate outcome right now, right? And they're not able to.
100%. And that's one of the biggest it's one of the biggest mistakes any of us can ever make. Like I always say when my students come to me with questions about, things from the Torah that don't jive with their understanding of the world, with their Weltanschauung of 2021. And I always say, my friend, the problem is you're looking at this incorrectly for two reasons. Number one, you're using Western glasses. You need Torah glasses. Let's put the Torah glasses on. And number two, you're taking the here and now view. You need the 30,000 feet view of this to be able to understand what's going on. And but people always like you make a decision on the here and now and like, oh, this is terrible. It's like, no, dude. You gotta, like the famous zug from Moshe Rabbeinu coming up, right? Where Shivas B'Tammuz is just 12 days away, and Shivas B'Tammuz is the anniversary of the Shivra Luchos, so the smashing of the tablets. And afterwards, it began a whole process of tshuva, and you had the first 40 days, the second 40 days, and probably towards the end of that second 40 days, Moshe Rabbeinu says to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, he says, I want to see your face, and the Rebbeinu Shalom responds, you can't see my face, you can only see my back. And it says that the Rebbeinu Shalom put Moshe Rabbeinu in the cleft of a rock, and he passed through, and he saw his back, whatever that means. But one of the things that the Meforshim say is that this exact point, that Moshe Rabbeinu said, "I want to understand the world. I want to understand from your purview what's going on." To which Rebbeinu Shalom said, "You can't understand it from my purview. You can only understand it once you have all the facts, once it's passed by, once you have 30,000 feet on it, once you have 20 years on it. Then you can look back and understand it, because then you have the full story. From the front, you don't have the full story." But after events happen, then you can have the full story and understand it. By the way, the Rambam has a totally different understanding there. I've based on your inspiration, Rabbi Spiro. I've been reading the Noach Weinberg biography, which I'm loving, and one of the takeaways I'm not so far into it yet, maybe 50, 100 pages or so. But one of the takeaways I've taken is I've always wanted to have a Seder in Mishnah Torah, because I've never learned to cover, and I always felt, I said, one of these days I need to get a Seder in Mishnah Torah, at least start with Sefer Mada, and I finally did it. I've been doing it. I've gotten a couple Prakim to Sefer Mada, and it's your influence, Rabbi Spiro, because you got me to read the Noach Weinberg biography, and it was that biography that inspired me to finally have a Seder in the Rambam, so thank you.
So let's get back into Rus a little bit. I know it's past the season, but Rus is Torah. Torah is for all seasons. I don't know where we were holding by. I think where Nami tells Rus she has to approach Bayaz, which leads to a very difficult sequence of events, which I don't have a clear answer to. That Rus goes into Bayaz's house and uncovers his feet at night when he's sleeping. So I'll tell you how some of our learn what is the most important midah of a king, right? So obviously a person would think, well, leadership qualities, which obviously is crucial for a king, and to have close relationship with Hashem is obviously the most important thing for anybody to have. But the Mefarshim say one of the most important things is the idea of patience and humility. And they said it was a test for Bayaz. What would Bayaz do when a woman comes to his room in the middle of the night? He's a Goddull at door. He could yell at her and say, "You're a chutzpah, right? Chutzpanit," and you have to leave. How could he do? And Bayaz is calm the whole time. He says, "No, we can't be tonight." We know the Gemara we've spoken about before. The Gemara speaks about as great as Yosef HaTzadik was. We know that Bayaz was even greater. The whole night he was held back from temptation. As great as Bayaz was, Palti ben Laish was even greater. I think we've discussed one or two times before. For now, we'll leave it on the side. But a cousin of Shalom Melech, who was briefly married to Michal Bashol, possibly against halacha. That's a whole separate sugya in Masechet Sanhedrin and in Shmuel Aleph. But whatever the case is, Bayaz passes both tests. Number one, he doesn't touch Rus that night. Number two, he is patient the whole time. He tells her we have to wait. There's a Goyal, Karav Mimeni, who's closer than me, which the Chayra is either his younger brother, his older brother, Taiv, or his uncle Taiv, whoever he's related to him. Let's wait till tomorrow and go to Sanhedrin and clarify. The next day they go to Sanhedrin, and of course Taiv is there. And we have to, the stature of his family, it's hard for us to appreciate. Of the three brothers, Elimelech, Bayaz, and Taiv, they were Gedalei Olam. They were the Gedalei of that generation. By the way, Machlon and Kilion also, as far as bring down, were really unique personages of that generation. So Bayaz says, "Will you redeem the fields that belong to your brother Elimelech?" He says, "Of course I'll redeem them." "Will you marry Machlon's wife?" "No." because I won't do it. Pen ashchis nachlasi. Maybe I'll mess up my nachla. The Brisker Rav gives a famous teretz where he says maybe Sanhedrin. There's some things Sanhedrin paskins that are like halacha ma'ashem Sinai, which can never be changed. But there are other things which can be changed through a Sanhedrin, either Goddull b'chach, but Goddull b'minyan. So the Rav says that really, Bayaz Eli Toiv was worried that ultimately Sanhedrin would change one day and he would mess up his heritage. I don't understand the answer to the Brisker Rav, because then if that would be the case, why is he so? His name is never mentioned. He's only called Ploni Amoni. The Midrash explicitly says because he didn't stand up and do the right thing, he lost his name. The answer to the Brisker Rav to me is hard to understand. And maybe it could be I'm not fully understanding it.
That's an interesting point, though, about the concern that he had, because you see that concern did become an issue. I mean, it didn't. In other words, in the times of Yishai, right? There's a famous, very, very, I don't want to say famous. I think it's famous because I think it's geschmack, but I think a lot of people don't know it. But a very famous, it's Sefer Todah, Revelio Kitov, talking about why in the world when Shmuel Navi came to the house of Yishai, the house of Jesse, to anoint the next king, why Jesse only brought 6 of his sons out and didn't bring David Melech. In other words, Navi comes to his house, says, "Bring me your sons. One of them's going to be the king." He brings 6 of them and doesn't bring the 7. I bring 7 and not 8. I forget the number. Is it 8 in total? Right. David Melech was 7 of 8. Right. Whatever it is. So he brings all of them, and Shmuel Navi goes through them and says, "The Melech is in here." He goes, "Oh, really? There's one more. Like the red scruddy one out in the field," and then he brings them in, and that's David Melech, right? And the Gemara in Pesachim says this is the verses that we say in Hallel of Evan Malas Abonim Haisel Rosh Pina, that the one that was cast away by the builders, he's now the foundation stone. And it's talking about this moment, right? That one's Yishai talking, one's the brothers, one's Shmuel Navi, right? But what's going on over there? Like Yishai's a Yerushalayim, right? He's a tzaddik. The Navi comes and says, "I need your sons." And okay, you know what? It's definitely not this one, so I'm just going to give you the 7 that it might be. Right, so what's going on over there? So Elio Kitov has a whole shtickle Torah that's in of itself I have a lot of difficulties on, but he basically says that there was a time when Yishai actually separated from his wife because he was concerned about the same thing that Tov was concerned about, the shaila of Moavi v'lo Moavis, if he was a legitimate Jew, being a descendant of Ruth, or not a legitimate Jew, and therefore could he be married to his wife, could he not be married to his wife, because if the halacha was Moavi v'Moavis, in other words, that the decree was on both male and female Moabites, then that would mean that Jesse's grandmother was a Moabite, and therefore he was illegitimate to marry a Jew. He could not marry another Jew, therefore couldn't be married to Mrs. Yishai, whose name I don't think we have, and therefore he separated from her until the Sanhedrin, so to speak, rested the question, and then he reunited with her. And Elio Kitov goes on to say a whole situation where he married a Shifcha in the meantime, and Mrs. Yishai made a deal with the Shifcha. Many questions on it, but it's one of those like really geschmack pieces of Torah that like raises as many questions as it solves. The premise, we'll go to the premise without getting too inside baseball on it, but the premise is that Yishai, there was a thought that Yishai thought that David Melech was not his son, right? That he thought that David Melech was not really his son. And it was only when all the other 7 were disqualified that Yishai said, "Well, there's this other one, but he's not really my son." It's not what the psukim say, but that's what Elio Kitov reads into it.
We're missing a ton of midrashim. We're missing a ton. You'll often see Das Kane Valley Taisus brings down midrashim, which we don't have anywhere. So yeah, that we don't. It's
actually a chida. The chida says this. That I asked Rav Kalman Weinrib once, and he said he found it in the Elio Kitov doesn't quote sources, I think, for the most part. But Rav Kalman Weinrib from Ner Yisrael said he found it once in a chida. I heard this in a shmuz from him.
I don't have the original Midrash, that's for sure. By the way, David's mother's name was Nitzevet.
Oh, we do have her name. Okay, thanks for googling it.
I looked up quickly. I didn't remember.
Yeah, right. I couldn't remember if we had her name. But it's interesting that just you said about how we don't have so many midrashim. There's so much Torah we don't have. First of all, we even know the basic midrashim, we don't have the whole set because we see some of I think it's Tanchuma was originally on. Was it Tanchuma? Yeah, Tanchuma I think was on all 5 Sfarim of the Torah, but we only have I think we only have it on Bereshis and Shmos. Am I getting that right? I don't know if I'm getting whatever. There's many of the Midrashim, like the Spiros Sifri, that we know were on more. If you think of the base of Midrashim, right? Tanchuma, Rabbah, Spiros Sifri, there were those covered more than what we have. We know that. But for sure beyond that, there are other Midrashim. And I always like to point out that coming the season of Tisha B'Av and the season of the Drei Wochen, the 3 weeks, one of the kinas we're going to say is the famous kina by the Maram Rotenberg of the tragedy of 1252 in France, where Louis IX burnt the 24 cartloads of Sfarim. And we look at that as a terrible tragedy, but I don't think we fully understand the magnitude of that tragedy. And the magnitude was on a number of levels. Number one is 200 years before the printing press. So if you burn 24 cartloads of Sfarim, you're really destroying every library and every book that the Jews had in that part of the world, which was the bastion of Ashkenazi Jewry at that point. Most of Ashkenazi Jewry lived in France, and there was not a communication between Ashkenazi Jewry and Sephardi Jewry. You had the Ben Ezra, who's like one famous person who went back and forth, but for the most part, there was like a Berlin Wall because of the conflict between the Christians and the Muslims, and you did not have a lot of communication. And so like burning these Sfarim, really burning everything. It's not like they didn't have Otzar Chachma then, right? They couldn't just call Art School and get another Shas, or call the bookstore and get another Shas. It didn't happen like that. So that was one tragedy. But the second tragedy is all the great yeshivas of France were shut down after that, because it was, there was no more Sfarim, and they all migrated to England temporarily until they were kicked out of England. But really the tragedy that's not always talked about so much, but I think is a very important piece of that, is so much of the Chedushim of the Bali Tosfos were lost in that tragedy, because those 24 cartloads included either their notebooks or their writings on their scrolls of the Shas or whatever it was, that when finally the Maram Rotenberg and others, Maram Rotenberg, I think it was, he redacted 18 out of whatever it is, 36 Masechtas of the Tosfos, to more than half he redacted, right? He was only taking from what he had, which was only a fraction of what there probably was before 1252 and Louis IX, who they unfortunately went on to name a Midwestern city of which your family comes from after. But yeah, there's so much Torah. I always like to refer to the Meiri. Like now we have the whole Beis Bechira, 20 volumes or whatever it is. That was in the 80s or 90s maybe it was. They got that on microfiche out of the Vatican. Originally, I don't know what the relationship is today, but in the 80s, that we, the Jewish community, could get Sfarim. We could go into the Vatican and see what they had, and then we could get microfiche. They wouldn't let us take out the Sfarim, but they would give us microfiche of the Sfarim. So if you remember what microfiche are, most people don't remember what that is. Whereas Spiro, I know that you have a whole microfiche collection in your attic. But the whole Beis Bechira that we have today was a complete set that was found in the Vatican, and they were able to get it on microfiche, and they printed it. And because of that, we have a whole Beis Bechira. But that meant from when was the Meiri? The Meiri was
1300s.
Yeah, it was like the border between Rishon and Achronim, somewhere over there.
Like early 1300s, he was.
1300s, right. So whatever, whatever it is. So for however long it was, but probably from the end of French Jewry until 1990, you had the references of other Rishonim Achronim to the Meiri. Our fathers in yeshiva and our grandfathers in yeshiva, they couldn't go over to the Sfarim Shrank and look up a Meiri. It didn't exist. So it's really fascinating that you had the Sfarim that were completely lost. We only had references to another Sfarim, and all of a sudden we have it. And it's an amazing thing. I wasn't young enough I was too young to remember, but they should have made like a Yontav L'Rabbanim when they published that Meiri. I don't know if you remember those days. I think it was.
No,
I don't remember how old you.
It was like the 70s. Yeah, I don't remember.
It was the 70s. God, I thought it was more recent than that. But that should have been a Yontav L'Rabbanim. It should have been like and I don't know if it was. Maybe it was. I just was don't remember it because I wasn't alive yet. But.
Yeah, I don't know enough people appreciate it. But yes, it was definitely one of the great. Sfarim discoveries. Let's just get back to Megillah Shavuos just to wrap it up. So Lamaisa, this person Taiv, his brother, Pliny Almoni, as he's called, he loses his name. He lacked courage. He did not have courage, and Bayaz had courage. That's why his name is Bayaz. To him, his strength. He is a courageous personality. He wasn't afraid to do something that would look funny, to marry the daughter of Eglon, the granddaughter of Eglon, however it is. he had no fear in doing such a thing. And that shows his greatness. That really, but the essence of Yid, tying it into what we mentioned earlier, an essence of a Yid is to be optimistic, bold, courageous. Havi Azkanemer, right? We always have to have that gaiva de kedusha, right? That arrogant azus, of brazenness, of knowing that K'lal Yisroel will survive, everything will work out in the end. Doesn't mean will there be tragedies and suffering? Yes, that's part of our legacy. But the Netzach Yisrael Yishaker, right? The eternity of K'lal Yisrael is not lying. We will live forever, and very important for us to remember that, and never to feel in any given historical situation that this is something we can never get out of. It's impossible. No such thing as that.
Beautiful. Oh, beautiful Torah, Rabbi Spiro. And look, there's so many timeless lessons. So many timeless lessons we take from anything in Nach. I've had a lot of conversations lately with my good friend Dave Farkas. Maybe one day we should have on the podcast. He's just a fascinating individual. I don't know how well you know him, but he's really a brilliant guy and he's very well read in Nach. And he wrote a sefer on Midrash, right, on Midrash Rabbi. He wrote a sefer on Midrash Rabbi. It's a beautiful sefer. I have it over here on my shelf. I've even opened it before and even looked at it, but he and I've been very fascinated we know about a year ago I started my project of trying to learn a parak of Navi a day, and listening to the Navi podcast to support that, and I'm up to Yeshaya because I've been going chronological. In other words, I finished Chizkiyahu and both Malachim and Divrei Yamim, and then I did Shrei Yasser up until that point, in other words up to Amos, and then now I'm up to Yeshaya, to the book of Isaiah, and it's fascinating. So many times, I mean, the book is written for the generations. I mean, that was what Yeshaya Navi was doing. He was both prophesizing the Chorban and giving. It's almost a ping pong game, right? It's almost chapter to chapter goes back and forth with something about the Chorban. Now let me console K'lal Yisroel and tell them what the future is going to look like. Something about the Chorban. Let's console K'lal Yisroel. But so many timeless lessons that just so much of the words of Yeshaya could have been written today. And when we talk about Tanakh and the fact that these 24 Sfarim made it into Tanakh with all the probably hundreds of thousands of others that didn't, it's because these have the timeless lessons. And it sometimes takes a little bit of work to uncover those lessons, but they're there. And it's always beautiful and geschmack and enjoyable to really delve into them and bring out these lessons. So, anyhow, Rabbi Spiro, this has been a blast as always. For all you listening, we need you to share this with the world. We're working on becoming the number one Jewish podcast in the world, and then we're going to become the number one podcast in the world. Like, watch out, Tim Ferriss, because we're going to become the top of the best podcast in the world, and you're going to help us do it because you're going to share this with your friends. If you're watching this on YouTube or Facebook, be sure to like it and share it. If you're listening to this on your podcast provider, be sure to, again, share it with a friend, leave a positive review, because you're going to help us to reach our goal of becoming the best podcast in the world. And if there's a topic you want to see us cover, please, by all means, send it to us. You can email me at rabbi@torahcleveland.com. You can send it to us on the Jewcast Facebook page. If you want to get to Rabbi Spiro, I hear there's some great carrier pigeons around you can use. And in the meantime, we want to thank you for your attention, thank you for listening, and wish you a beautiful week ahead.
Welcome to the guest.